Dragan, how are you?
Very well, surviving. How are you? Everything is fine.
Yeah. I'm okay. I'm okay. Yeah. But they cannot show us visually at the moment here.
Something is wrong. The message is that WAAS administrator started screen sharing, but
Yeah.
nothing.
Dragan, where are you at the moment?
Uh, Actually, I'm in Malta,
In Malta.
following different congress of my wife and myself too. So actually, I'm in three congress right now.
What is the main? It's all about economics, or what's the topic?
Yes, that's right. This is the network of uh, banks from the NLB Comercijalna Banka group. And
Yeah.
this is the opportunity to share ideas in the system of new regulation when the Central Bank of Europe changed policy from uh, low interest rate to high interest rate, from dovish to
Yeah. This
hawkish
debate.
policy. So
Yeah.
there are many consequences of this policy. So
Absolutely.
this is a parallel track in my engagement in this block of 3 days.
Oh, wow.
What's happening with your engagement in Fiscal Council of the Germany? Oh, Carlos, uh, we have a Carlos on hand.
Hello, everybody.
Good afternoon, Carlos. Great
Good
to see you.
afternoon.
Close.
The same.
Nice to see you.
The
Fantastic.
same. Hey, Stefan.
Phoebe also coming, and also
Yes, I'm here.
waiting. I following yesterday the panel led by Phoebe, and I hope that we will be on the same level this afternoon.
Phoebe, how are you doing?
Phoebe?
Phoebe, how are you
I'm
doing?
good. I am good. Today we are hosting a big project meeting of our European Research Council meeting. So we have about 40, 50 researchers from the different institutions that are part of this. So it's quite hectic, but it's good. All is good. Good. How about you?
I just came back from Kos.
Nice.
There was a conference on integral medicine, and they invited me as one of the key speakers, and it's a wonderful island. And
Yes.
it was really wonderful weather, very good treat, very good hosting, and very much appreciated. Wonderful out down there. I just got back.
It's a lovely island, and if there is one thing we do well, is hosting people. So,
And on Kos is the temple of Hippocrates.
yes, of
Visited
course.
that as where it was the cradle of Western medicine started in these temples.
Yeah. Did they showed you the tree and the little?
Yeah. We all went there because there were 400 medical doctors and activists in that field. It was quite an impressive scenario.
It's amazing how advanced they were.
Yeah,
In terms of you know, even for surgeries and anesthetics and stuff, they were so advanced.
Sorry for interrupting. We are live now.
Yes, but we wait. Joseph Gary, is he coming?
He has
But,
not
he
joined
will-
yet, but we will try reaching him.
I have just sent him an email saying that we have started the session and we are waiting. So,
Okay, we will start with small delay. Welcome to the panel 5B. Let me say at first that it is a privilege and honor to moderate this panel with nexus of such esteemed co-panelists like Tibi, Konduri, Carlos Alvarez Pereira, Stepan Brunhuber, Alexander Kovacevic, and Josep Gary. For intro, let me say that without any doubt, supremacy of dominance habit in terms of people against nature, as well as people against other people, human egoism as a mindset, and market fundamentalism as a mind setting, rapidly and continuously destroying the natural and human capital, as well as sustainability, which means security of the economy, society, and the planet as a whole. From the Great Recession of 2008, particularly until today, despite exponential development of new technologies based on the last two industrial revolutions, the humankind has entered in the period of regression, namely the period of wasted opportunities, something what has not been anticipated in the strategic audit of the growth potentials of this area. Even more, exponential change in almost unlinear economic system and almost unlinear social system full of so-called echo chambers is difficult to manage due to incapacity to deal with some kind of changes. Problem persists more than 50 years without solutions. Paradoxically, in time when universal connectivity becomes a new free good, understanding potentials of frontier technologies like AI, quantum computing, and synthetic biology is not available for application. It is poor, incomplete, and unimplementable. Paradoxically, technological development is perceived in this era as a threat. How do we explain this paradox? The root cause of such multi-crisis lies in fractured socio-economic system, full of fault lines and misconceptions, all exacerbating and expanding inbuilt structural imbalances of the socio-economic system and the anomalies of reaction policy measures. In $100 trillion world economy, key planetary imbalance is a climate change. Anthropogenic impact of global warming transformed the conventional weather in so-called weather of mass destruction. The acronym of this previous construct is WMD. From other side, in economy full imbalances like financialization, securitization, income concentration, deindustrialization, etc., competitiveness is eroding. Using geopolitics in some economies as economic variable to restore competitiveness is counterproductive. It is not panacea, but it is most disruptive way to mitigate inbuilt imbalances, namely deepening them. Geopolitics, at the end of the day, leads to militarization of the economy and society and the greater use of so-called weapons of mass destruction. The acronym of previous construct is again WMD. Weather of mass destruction plus weapons of mass destruction mutually assured in double WMD, and probably will produce apocalyptic consequences because They continually ruining socioeconomic system, biosphere, and physical system. Shortly, the prospects of sustainability of the planet as a system dynamics in the terms of J. Forrester. Shift from new normal to better normal required to restore common vision of sustainability. Multi-crisis, perma-crisis, crisis in the system of crisis, of any, needs multi-transition, colloquially named the green transition that fit the purpose to make sustainable economy both toward the people and the planet as a whole. The green transition is a climate-neutral transformation of industries related to energy production and land use, as well as introduction of the new lifestyle based on reversibility principle, should lead to inherently sustainable economy. The green transition is collective responsibility of each national economy. There is no exception at all. The green transition is also path. Sustainable economy is the destination. The Green Transition Action Plan we discussed today is the vehicle, localization of global ideas in the local geography. On global level, the green transition is opportunity for achieving global equilibrium between factor prices and factor incomes by respecting planetary boundaries and reaching so-called Pareto optimum. Stefan sometimes is ready to point it out. From developing economies perspective, it could be an astonishing idea to avoid middle income trap and accelerate catching up developed world through climate neutral industrialization. Finally, and importantly, it is a way of greater convergence between developed and developing world, shared prosperity, and greater respect toward the global commons. Although the concept of green transition has borne in cloud of controversies, of multi-crisis. In this panel, we bring together not only pioneers and authorities from the field, but also radical believers in this concept. There is no lack of explanatory details in green transition blueprint between them. Most memorable moments from crystallization of this concept are circular model of growth, B, heterodox economic policy platform, C, green financing models, and D, implementation of sustainability-related disclosure based on ESG matrices. Our intention in this panel is to distill from the well-known blueprint we just mentioned, specifics of developed and developing economies and accentuate them throughout discussion. With such idea behind, let me start discussion with our first panelist, Phoebe Konduri. Many institutions, working groups, and other gatherings headed by Professor Konduri have released applicable outcomes to mitigate climate emergency and related issues from the perspective of ECGs and from the perspective of the role of the technology and innovations. Question to Phoebe is going to be, Phoebe, would you accentuate key differences in green transition action plan between developed and developing economies from the perspective of technology and innovation? Please, we are listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you for a very holistic and inclusive introduction. I will share some slides just to showcase a few issues that can answer the question on the differences between the implementation of the green transition in the global north and the global south. So indeed, we have this multiple crisis like you referred to, and it's a economic crisis, low growth rates, inflationary pressures, shrinking fiscal spaces, but also this confirmed a situation where we have 1/3 of the countries around the world being at the brink of default, and these are mostly developing countries. Together with these economic issues, we of course have the environmental issues, climate destabilization, and biodiversity collapse. And all of this is integrating into a big social problem of increasing inequalities between the global south and the global north, but also inequalities within countries, and not just developing countries, but increases inequality within developed countries. All these crises and not equitable growth, non-inclusive growth, it's leading to geopolitical pressures, like you also said. So in 2015, we thought, and 163 countries have agreed, that our escape route can be sketched in these 17 Sustainable Development Goals and the 169 targets within them. And the research group that I am leading, possibly the biggest science policy research interface on the sustainability transition, the biggest research team in Europe and possibly beyond Europe, called the Alliance of Excellence for Research and Innovation on IFORIA meaning sustainability, and it's a Greek word, is bringing together various research and innovation centers, innovation accelerators, technological, financial, fiscal, social innovations, but also science policy networks and scientific associations and academies, like the one that is hosting this very interesting conference, the World Academy of Art and Science, in order to sketch science-based pathways for the transition to sustainability that are, however, between the scientists and all other stakeholders, including politicians, policymakers, businessmen, financial institutions, and civil society. And what we see is that although the agenda for the SDGs, which is an agenda for a sustainable interaction between the socioeconomic systems and the natural systems, is the global agenda. It's actually the only global agenda, in addition to the Charter of Human Rights of the UN. We see that the detailed transposition of this agenda into policies that are directly implementable and financed is basically happening in Europe and roughly happening in other countries of the developed world. The transposition of this agenda in Europe is called the European Green Deal, that has many different elements to it and basically provides science-based policy designs, laws, and regulations, and the relevant fiscal and financial framework that can finance these policies through public and private funds, and also public-private partnerships, in order to achieve the implementation of the green transition. However, in the rest of the world, although we have a huge acceleration of pledges to climate neutrality, which basically translates to use of renewables, circular economy, nature-based solutions, digitalization in mobility. We definitely have a huge acceleration of pledges around the world, both in the global south and in the global north. If we looked at the picture of the slide that I'm showing on the left-hand side of my screen 5 years ago, there would be almost nothing. There would be just the first announcement of the European Green Deal. But nowadays, we have climate neutrality pledges around the world. So the global south is on board. It has the intentions to be climate neutral, to be sustainable, not just with regards to climate, but with regards to the holistic interaction between the socioeconomic systems and the natural systems. But there are 2 points to note. First, that only Europe has a very detailed transposition of these pledges into a policy implementable framework that is well financed. And the developed work is much more advanced in terms of this policy transposition. The second point to note is that the summation of all the efforts and promises and policies and regulations and law is not enough to achieve climate neutrality, is not enough to achieve the maximum plus 1.5 increase in global average temperature by which is a cutoff point which safeguards our survival with the technology that we have in our hands. So indeed, we have a very different pace. And that's why during the COPs, COP26, COP27, COP28, we had a very vivid discussion of the loss and damage fund, which basically allowed us to say that we understand that for global problems and the energy transition and the sustainability transition, the developed world or the global north is imposing a lot of externalities on the rest of the world. The rest of the world has numerous hotspots of the negative effects. So we should get together in order to restructure global financial architecture to allow financing of at least adaptation, safeguarding the people, civil protection against unsustainable practices, and one obvious one is climate change. So I want to close by focusing on this structure of the Global Climate Hub, just to make which I chair. This is the UN SDSN Global Climate Hub that is working with the 2,000 institutional members of the Sustainable Development Solution Network under the auspices of the General Secretary of the UN, working with all the countries in the world in order to develop detailed national pathways towards climate neutrality and climate resilience. And this is how the whole energy transition should be dealt with. And here we made explicit what are the science areas that we should tackle. So downscaling climate scenarios, figuring out the energy system transition, the land use and marine use system transition, health system transition, and socioeconomic systems transition in terms of financing the transition, but also safeguarding the vulnerable from the regressive effects that they might face during this transition. And all these systems need to be integrated into a holistic pathway transition for each and every country, and then in regional pathways across the world. In this very explicit science-based mathematical modeling, and then there is um, science exercise should be introduced to provide the capacity to the local stakeholders, both in terms of education, skilling, reskilling, upskilling, and technology, but also using very informative local knowledge in order to refine the science-based pathways and allow the transition to happen in a way that stakeholders are engaged, and at the end of the day, they really make the transition. So having showcased what needs to be done.
Sorry for interrupting you, but regarding the time limits, must stop here.
Okay, I just want to show one map, just one map. It's just one map, which showcases the level of achievement of the SDGs in total across the global south and the global north. And you can see that this is the average achievement of the SDGs as we publish it every year as Sustainable Development Goals. And you can see that the most developed countries are the ones that are advanced with regards to that, because they have the technology and the finance and the capacity. And you can see that explicitly. This is the picture for SDG, affordable and clean energy. You can see where you've got red is where you have stagnation with regards to the progress, and where you have green is where you have achieved the goal, and where you have yellow and orange is where you are trying to achieve the goal, but you are facing challenges. So to cut a long story short, there are huge differences, and mainly they derive from the lack of finance to acquire the technology, the infrastructure, but also the capacity in terms of knowledge and skills in order to implement the green and digital transition. And in order to escape that—
we will continue with these aspects you just mentioned. Thank you for valuable contribution. We have moved automatically to Carlos. Actually, after 2.5 centuries of industrialization based on linear model of growth and more than 4 decades of market fundamentalism, the planet is not enough for future development. For example, if everyone in the world lived like people in US in 2023, the global economy will require almost 5 planets more in order to satisfy global need for resources. One of the authors of last report of the Club of Rome accentuated this problem of limits to growth, is our following co-panelist, General Secretary of Club of Rome, Carlos Fernandez Pereira. Question to Carlos. Carlos, under your view, have humanity lost momentum in searching for solution? Is this possible at all? If the answer is yes, are there any differences between developing and developed nations?
Thank you, Dragan. First of all, for inviting me and to WAAS, of which I'm a fellow, as you know, for organizing this outstanding conference. Yeah, your question is excellent because honestly, I think we got lost in looking for this unicorn that we call sustainable development. And we have been pursuing a fantasy animal. And I would start by questioning 2 aspects of this. One is this categorization of countries as developing or developed. And another aspect that I want to question is that we have been developing in the last decades. Why? Because nowadays, as my colleague in the Club of Rome, Kate Rayworth, says, we could say there are no developed countries at all. No country is developed. which of course requires a bit of explanation and ultimately the redefinition of what we understand by human development. But let me show you just one slide to illustrate what I mean by what I just said. This is, I assume many of you have already seen this slide or a similar one, you know, this graph, which shows a Human Development Index. That's a UN indicator combining levels of GDP per capita, health indicators, and education indicators for different countries. So the dots, the colored dots on the graph are countries versus ecological footprint, a concept developed by colleagues in the club, Bill Rees and Matthijs Wackernagel, which measures exactly what you just said, Dragan. How many planets do we need to sustain our lifestyle? And this graph is revealing, you know, in many ways, because we see a very unequal, very different distribution of countries. Countries which achieve a high level of Human Development Index, so on the right in the screen, have a very high ecological footprint, a totally unsustainable level of ecological footprint, which means, and this ecological footprint is ultimately related to the level of energy consumption per capita. It's not only energy, of course, but energy consumption per capita is a very good proxy for our footprint. So as you said, you know, the typical, I will call them industrialized countries in Europe, for instance, are around, we are living, you know, as if we had 4 planets and not one. And North America is even worse than that. While countries whose level of ecological footprint is compatible with the biocapacity of the planet, so the ones on the left, down and left in this graph, are countries where the level of Human Development Index is low. So it looks like we have an oxymoron when we use the expression sustainable development. As you can see in the quadrangle, which is in green, there are no dots inside. And this is the reality we have to face, which has at the same time multiple dimensions. One is that, we have to think again about anything like some countries being the good examples on which we can build. And particularly, we have to think again if we say, Europe is at the leading edge of the transformation. We might be the most disciplined in terms of discourse and in terms of adopting policies, but the countries are completely unsustainable and then cannot be called developed. Another dimension, of course, is that there is a fundamental inequity when facing this transition. For me, it's more than a transition. It's actually more a transformation and even a metamorphosis of what we understand by a good life. You know? But the inequity is obvious in this graph, and it's not independent. Let's not cheat ourselves thinking that, it's some countries have been able to develop, some countries have not been able to develop in the conventional sense of the term, and these two facts are independent from each other. No, of course not. We have the developed, so-called developed industrialized countries. We have a big debt towards what we call the developing countries, particularly in terms of the accumulated ecological footprint since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Another dimension, another interesting aspect of this graph is that there are actually a number of countries which are not so far from this rectangle of sustainable development, the one which are highlighted here. This is based on data from a few years ago, but actually it does not move much. And those countries like Philippines, Jamaica, Ecuador, etc., have relatively high levels of human development thanks to combination of, but generally relatively high levels of health and education indicators and levels of ecological footprint which are compatible with having one planet. So maybe we have to rethink this question that you were asking. Also because, yes, we see, for instance, a substantial backlash in Europe regarding the European Green Deal. We are just 3 weeks, a month away from the elections to the European Parliament. Let's see what happens there. And but there is a big paradox in seeing, you know, the EU Green Deal, which among other things is about restoring our connection with nature, being contested by the people, the only people who in modern societies are living every day, every moment, every hour, every minute in contact with nature, the farmers. So something has not been going well with this definition of European Green Deal and the design of policies and so on. But to end my intervention, my provocation would be, actually, we have to revisit the concept of development. What is a good life? What are the factors driving well-being and health? And realize that in the last decades, so probably many authors say we reached the climax of development in the human and social sense of the term. We reached the climax of that in the so-called developed countries 30 or 40 years ago. So maybe what we have seen since then is not development. We have been cheating ourselves. Yeah, a lot of technology, a lot of material consumption, of course, but is that human development? Did that contribute to health and well-being? Not so sure. So revisit the concept of what is human development, what it is to be human, what drives health and well-being. And just a very last idea, what if we had to learn together across this chasm, which is so obvious in this graph? What if we, the countries which we consider ourselves developed, what if we had to learn from countries in Africa and in Latin America and elsewhere that we have been considering as developing, and that we say we are helping them to become like us? What if the exercise of metamorphosis was much more an exercise of mutual learning, in which we have a lot to learn from their cultures about what it is to be human and what it is to have a good life? Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos, particularly for keeping the time limits. The idea about revisiting developing model and define the new model of growth is a pretext for our next panelist, Stefan Bruch-Huber. Stefan is a very interesting person, let me say, person with very rich and diversified background. It is polyhistor of modern time in full capacity. So we know his interest, and that this is the simple I can say about his background. To run the green transition, shift from brown industry to energy and land use industries based on the climate neutral technologies, so-called green transition, is important aspect of green transition. Question to Stefan. From which sources capital come from predominantly to finance transition from brown to green industrial portfolio? Does so-called green quantitative easing, your idea about financing, matters? and related to previous is using ESG matrices in mining and extract industry possible in this transition? Please.
Dragan, thank you very much for having me. I did not introduce the idea of green QE. It's much older. I would like to make some short comments on how to shift from brown to green, some preliminary ideas. And the first slide I would like to share is, I call it the economics of transformation. Right? If you look at historical data, ODA data, EU enlargement, German reunification, or the Marshall Plan, they requested about 1.5% of GDP in order to transit, right? To transit, let's say, within the EU enlargement. What we are realizing is, and see at the data, the global transition we are facing now from brown to green is about 6 to 8, even more times higher than the one we were talking in the first place. Second comment. If you look at the costs of externalities we've been caused already, and the entire underfunded commons we have on a planetary level, we are in a situation, public health calling a secondary preventive approach. And secondary preventive means the damage is set, and we now have to cope with the rising costs ahead and keep them as low as possible, right? And if you look at the interventions, we can call them TRAP. T stands for transferring money through fees and fiscal policy. R is restructuring debt and loans. A is austerity policy. P is privatizing the whole system. And the other P is we ask for philanthropy, for charity, for gifts. And if you take all these four aspects together, they will be very likely too low, too slow, and too late in order to face the situation we are in, to finance the costs of externalities that are backlashing on our economy. Look at this graph, and when we talk about the economics of transformation, we're talking about a shift from A to C, right? Within A, this is conventional economics. We're talking about booms and busts, and we're talking about fiscal policy and up and down, but we want to transit our economy where we are at A in order, which is brown, in order to reach C, which is green or regenerative or circular. You know, and as you know, 80% of the entire value chain is still depending on fossil energy. And we're still growing 3% globally within this 80% over and over and over again. So how can we transit from A to C in order to make sure that this liquidity, this capital is flowing in the right direction? If we don't transit from A to C, we end up in D. We basically prolong the past into the future, and we then end up in a downside of welfare and well-being, which is then another state of affairs, another state of society, which is then E or F. And if you look at the data, and we did that, in the midst, you see a plot of the required funding from brown to green. What we're doing right now is at the maximum $2,000 billion. And what's required is actually a shift from 2,000 to about $8,000 to $10,000 billion. And these are all these S curves you can measure and see when you try to shift an economy from A to C. And if you look, in order to evaluate the amount that has to shift every year, we are used the so-called conversion rate. The conversion rate is the amount of economy which is entirely shifting from A to C, from brown to green. And just remember, the entire global economy is still growing 3%, and 80% of it is still depending on fossil, more or less. And each time we implement a solar panel or a windmill, we still create wages and income and revenues based on the 80% fossil industry and the 3% growth process. So the conversion rate from brown to green, you can measure that it's roughly 5 to 7%. So we need to change about 5 to 7% at least from the brown into the green in order to make sure that we reach from A to C. In order to achieve this, I think we are in a Keynes 2.0 moment, I think, and referring to your question. We're in a situation where pure national fiscal policy, or what I called the trap in my first slide, is not enough, and we need an augmented monetary policy that faces this shift from A to C. We could call it a COLA. A COLA is a conditioned liquidity assistance. It's a monetary facility that enables central bankers, regulators, multilateral banks, World Bank, IMF, to generate additional but conditioned liquidity to first fund global commons, and second, to hedge and mobilize private capital to shift from A to C. And here, we can generate multiple new financial engineerings, from public-private partnership to state guarantees to hedging instruments, etc., in order to enable that shift. And then we're ending up in a situation called a Bretton Woods 2.0, where we not prolong the past into the future, but we rather dare to implement new financial engineerings to shift from A to C. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stefan. As always, original ideas to find solutions in contradictory situation we live. And also this transfer from A to C by keeping the growth Carlos just mentioned, strongly depends on energy transition, because this is the great contributor of investors, and this is the great demand of the capital. So your discussion is a pretext for the question to our energy expert, Alexander Kovacevic. So, Alexander, what would you add to the previous discussion from perspective of energy transition?
Well, thank you for the invitation and thank you for the question. I would say that first thing is, yes, transition is possible by 2050. It is feasible and it can be done. However, the other answer is not that easy. I think we have, and also listening to these presentations just now, it seems to me that specification of the transition is way too narrow. At this moment, what we call transition or energy transition paradigm is dominated by electrification, digitalization, use of ambient energy, wind, solar, etc. And it's let's say, a prerequisite for that, for full electrification of energy, is basically fantastic integration of the energy system. So what we have, what is behind the scene, what we don't see as on this, when we are talking about transition, we don't see that it is essentially dystopian vision of the integrated energy system, where some sort of supreme authority, artificial intelligence, people, governments, commands supply and demand in order to maintain integrity of complex electrical systems. That doesn't work. So that it's simply impossible to cover all energy needs by electricity. It also, this command have to be beyond limits of the feedback system. It have to be somehow predictive. And then, of course, it affects human development. It limits elasticity of supply. And then, of course, it invites the governments to do something in terms of financing, etc. So we have a combination. What we see today is governments on one side looking for resource rents, transit rents. We see the wars because of that. On the other side, the government struggling with the sovereign debt to finance transition and fantastically high bill investment requirement for this transition. I simply believe that all this doesn't work. And I would like to give a little suggestion on this. Let's try to see if we can share this. It's a co-integrated system. So with the idea that co-integration between more complex energy systems, where demand is covered not only by electricity, but also by renewable methane and carbon dioxide, looking into these three as a fundamental energy commodities, then it becomes feasible. And it gives us an opportunity to repurpose existing infrastructure. The investment requirements goes dramatically down. We are able then to actually imagine that it is doable, that it is financeable in a way. And to make things more important, there is no uncertainty of government intervention. Quite the contrary, there is a certainty of commercial markets, where commercial players respond to the customer demand. I mean, when we talk human development, I like UN human development goals. I've been working in them for many, many years. But human development effectively translates into customer demand and customer choice. So we need a system which actually responds to the customers and which serves the customer. So at this moment, predominant paradigm is serving the government. What government tells us through contract for differences, sovereign financing, feed-in tariffs, policy of this kind, etc., etc. So let's talk about the customers, and this is, I believe, important. The other thing is actually we can. In that case, the sustainability criteria becomes much easier. It's relatively simple. And I have done a little calculation here using typical industrial assumption that we may be able to produce hydrogen at $1.5 per kilo. And I see a number of big industrial companies telling me that this is possible. And the consequence of that is renewable methane in the price ballpark, which is actually competitive currently with LNG supply. So yes, we can repurpose existing infrastructure. We can transform the energy system at much, much lower cost. But the consequence of that is a shrink of the energy share in the GDP formation, on one side. And on the other side, we need something that people don't like talking about, but we need a massive restructuring in international trade, both in terms of content and geopolitics. So I'm afraid that current military threats, risks to security risks have to be addressed by very, very significant change in geopolitical relations and international trade. That's it. Thank you.
Alexandre, it seems to me that it's the right moment to stop,
Yes, please.
particularly keeping in mind that we have time reserve of 5 minutes vis-a-vis the schedule. Let me say that it was the great pleasure to participate in this event. Thank you for contributing discussion with valuable ideas. Sometimes they was fascinating. And also I'd like to thank in the behalf of the panel, the Gary, let me say, intellectual engine of the World Academy, and Yanani as moving spirit of organization and management of this event. Thank you for opportunity to participate in this event and get contributions. Now is 4:53, 3 minutes delay, and I hope that administrator will tolerate our undiscipline. Thank you so much and see you soon. All the best.
Thank you. Enjoy. Take care.
Dragan, all the best for you. Thank you for
Fantastic discussion. Remember, so Keynes is always fertile.
all the best. Bye-bye.
Hi all.
Hello.
Hi, good to see you all.
Good to see you also.
Same.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Yeah, I have a new computer, so I'm trying to use it for in this Zoom session, and a lot of adjustment. I tell you, technology is very challenging.
Hi, everybody.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can hear you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I'm just wondering if I don't see Ivo here.
Yeah, he was missing temporarily.
I don't know. Maybe just give him a short phone call before we start so that I talked to him like an hour ago. So
Hear
for
me?
the technical stuff, I think Ivo is already joined, but he is not allowed as panelist. So if you could find him and let him in as panelist.
Oh, yes.
Samuel, just a moment. Yes, they are looking to solve the issue.
We don't
I
have
think
his
Karin is the
name.
administrator.
Yeah, we
Eva,
don't have. We
I
don't
think
have
he
his
has
name.
joined as iPhone.
Yeah.
And he has declined to be promoted to be a panelist.
yes, exactly.
No, we are promoting him to be, but he's declining it.
Oh,
He has to
okay,
accept
just a
it. He's
moment.
declining it. Yeah.
Eva, they are sending you the invitation.
Please accept to be promoted as a panelist.
Well, how is he declining it?
When we send a request, there will be an option to accept as well as to decline. So he seems to be declining.
If someone can guide him which buttons to push.
Yeah, he's rejoining now. He's a panelist.
Hello, Jalal.
Could you, Vasily, could you please send him again the invitation?
Hi, Fadwa.
Hello.
And hi,
From-
everybody.
From all over the world.
Sent it again.
Hi, Ranjani.
So good to see you and talk to you for the first time.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know that we didn't talk. Yeah, I thought we did. Maybe the email gives the illusion that you have talked. Yes. Oh, that's wonderful. We've been in contact for a long time.
It's an honor connecting with somebody who's been a revolutionary. I'm a fan of your articles and what you do with education.
Is the panel listening?
Okay.
Thank you so much.
So
Something is frozen here.
it's really good to see all of you. So it looks like we'll just put him on the microphone and from my web, so there is no issue. And session on social responsibility of science. This is really a very important time in history where science has to step up and do the job so that we really get this human security for all, and that not thousands are dying every day in the Middle East, in the Ukraine, in Africa, in other countries. Also, like the prime minister in Slovakia has been shot yesterday, so hopefully he will be alive and healthy. So it's really like the times are such that scientists have to really stress the social responsibility and step up so that we kind of overcome all the craziness in today's world. And oh, Eva is already inside, I see. Okay, this is perfect. So anyway, first I would like to welcome all our panelists. So first it's our honorary president, Professor Ivo Schlaus. Then we have Fadwa, who is also a member of Board of Trustees, in addition to being a fellow. Another fellow is Jalal Ezin from Tunisia. And then we have another fellow, Uroš Cvelbar from Slovenia, and also our editor of Cadmus, Ranjani Ravi. So welcome everybody, also everybody else who is listening to this session. And just in order to give some outline of the session, I'm just going to show like a really short PowerPoint so that we get some feeling on what is actually our task today. We talk about social responsibility of science. And here, as I said, it's a really crucial time in the history of humanity.
We
It
don't
has the
see
biggest challenges, but also the biggest.
there are no slides. There are no slides.
You don't see slides?
No.
Oh, sorry. I will just stop sharing again, and I will do it again. Okay. Is it better?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. So what we talk about is the social responsibility of science and the role of World Academy, and how can World Academy play even bigger role in this field. We all know that this computers are like new way of communicating, and they are gaining power like exponentially. Every 2 years they double, and this is actually a great opportunity, but also it is well, it can help us, like in science, it can help us discover equations, develop new science, new materials, new health topics, and everything that can help society. Like, for example, protein structures, it's only a few years that computers can calculate it. Before it was like a tedious millions of euros task, but now you can do it, he can do it almost instantly. And also this human-machine integration, you know, there has been a human that has been had a chip in the brain for a couple of months and it's helped him against the illness, and this can be used in the future. You know, for the first time in history, humans can get smarter. You know, for the past 2,000-3,000 years, our intelligence was about the same, but now we can get smarter. So this is really an opportunity to do better science. And if you look at this task, like the task the computers that are making, the human performance is here on top, which means that computers are learning faster and faster, and they can do more and more useful stuff. And if we join forces with computers, we can do even more than that. So how can we do it that science fiction becomes reality? What remains for the humans? It remains for us to know, to do, to live together, and to just be humans. It's like the 4 pillars of education from UNESCO. But what are the dangers? I mentioned there are like wars, people are dying. And as you can see here, this graph is not perfect, but it can show you that following the great advances more or less in the previous century, at the beginning of this century, something happened and the democracy started to have troubles, and they have even larger troubles today. So what can we do is the question, and there are challenges. Like one of the challenges is stop all wars now. I think Ivo will talk a little bit more about that. And there is also going to be a petition on change.org. Then even more important, to change the hearts and minds of people all over the world, because that's where the change happens, inside the heart, inside the mind. Then there is also this topic of competency development. If people develop our competencies, then we can do more and better for each other, and this could provide freedom for everybody. And there are lots of other ideas. So I would now like to ask Eva to start sharing the first set of ideas. And okay, now just a moment. I'm going to put Eva on the.
He can just
I hope you
unmute.
can hear Eva.
He can just unmute over the Zoom and he can talk.
Eva, you could also unmute on the Zoom if you'd like.
Sorry?
You could also unmute the Zoom, or you can talk now if you can hear. I think you can hear him. Yes. Eva, we can hear you. Can you start, please? So it's our honor to have the first panelist, our honorary president. He's been a physicist in high energy physics for quite a long time. We have cooperated with him a lot, and he has really great ideas both in physics and in humanity, and he likes to serve humanity. He has had all sorts of functions in so many academies, the Club of Rome, even in the Croatian parliament. So it's really our great pleasure to give the floor to Ivo. Eva, can you hear us?
Do you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. The floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much. It is indeed a great pleasure to share some of my thoughts related to the issue of the social responsibility of science. Let me start with something that usually is forgotten. Namely, it was already more than 2,000 years ago that Aristotle said, all men by nature have a desire to know. So actually we have this imperative of knowing more and more. We do believe that we know quite a lot, and as a matter of fact, when we look on the progress of science, we see that every 5 years the knowledge doubles. When we look at the various technical things, the progress is even faster in some area, like for instance the Moore's law. Imagine how the situation would be if there would be no quantum physics in chemistry. We would not understand Mendeleev system. In medicine, there will be no Röntgen, there will be no computerized tomography. Nothing of these things will be available. So progress is going on. So the idea is sometimes heard, let us stop science so that we do not interfere by bringing more and more dangerous technology is wrong. Though there are few persons like Rosblatt, like Sacristani, like a group of people initiated by Leo Szilard that proposed various things about scientists stopping to do research, which could be dangerous. There are on the opposite side more and more of those who will and are actually doing research that leads to very dangerous consequences. So A, science is important. B, we absolutely do not have enough of scientific research. As we always know the story that more than 100 years ago, Kelvin said, oh, we understand everything, there are two minor clouds, and then these two minor clouds turn to quantum physics and theory of relativity. Then recently, we had actually what we call the standard theory, and then we realized the standard theory covers just 5% of our universe. The rest we do not understand. So yes, absolutely, the imperative is we have to do much, much more in research, in education. One consequence is that all countries should devote considerably more of human power and GDP to science and research. So this is the first conclusion. The second, actually, that I want to point out is you Usually one would like to say, aha, let us pick those areas which are the most important. All of the studies show that actually all of the scientific disciplines from A to Z, from anthropology to zoology, are necessary, and they do not really progress in such a way that we can say, aha, now let us forget about biology, let us focus on physics, or let us forget about history or archaeology. We do need absolutely everything. However, all of these things that we do need are faced with the following problem. We are faced, as Sandy said at the beginning, with most dangerous time in the history of humankind. Why the most dangerous? Because we are destroying our natural and our human capital. And we do know that within roughly 2 decades, we will destroy this planet. And then in order to augment the problems that we already have, we are actually decided to get involved into totally unnecessary, stupid war, which now has this connection involving Europe, Middle East, Africa, and very likely most of the world. And the characteristic of this is that while we have still at our disposal 2 possibly 3 decades, the case of war, there is how we will destroy the world in less than a few days. So imperative is to focus on this necessity. And the question is what science can do. A lot of things. On one side of the various technological advancements, and to the other, that domains which are extremely important, namely economy and politics, are far, far from where they should be. Again, back to Aristotle, politics is a master science. In our case, this is not. As a matter of fact, the progress politics is much less than in any other domain. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear Eva, Professor Schlaus, for this wonderful introduction, which has inspired us. And I believe we should now just move on. So each of the panelists will have a short presentation. The next one is Professor Uroš Cvelbar, who has been a professor for nanosciences at Jožef Stefan Institute and Graduate School in Ljubljana, Slovenia. He's been a researcher in nanosciences, nanotechnologies, and material sciences. He's head of Department of Gaseous Electronics, and he's member of various academies and of research societies in these fields. And he's also a wonderful supervisor and very prudent researchers in the field of nanosciences. So please, Uroš, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sandy. You know, when I was first approached and with this topic, and asked for the quotation, I put the one which you can see, and I said the science must expand our understanding while ensuring the ethnical boundaries are respected and harmful consequences are mitigated. And in this term, I would like to relate to nanotechnology, which is my field of research. I think nanotechnology in general holds unprecedented control over matter at atomic and molecular scale, and holds as well immense potential to revolutionize our lives, from healthcare to energy, and from electronics to environmental sustainability. There's a large promise here. So with this great power comes also great responsibility. And this has also an ethical implication of nanotechnology, which should not be overstated. So the social responsibility of science with the referring to the use of nanotechnology, encompasses basically a broad spectrum of everything from spanning from environmental stewardship to equitable access to benefits, ethical use of technology, and mitigation of potential risk which might nanomaterials pose. So one of the foremost areas that actually I believe nanotechnology can contribute to society well-being is through a pursuit of a green agenda. This has been very well stated in European Union through the European Green Deal, which is aimed at achieving carbon neutrality as well as sustainable development. And this actually is leading toward great aided advances in nanotechnology. For instance, nanomaterials can be utilized to build more efficient solar panels that can be used to increase renewable energy generation. Similarly, nanotechnology holds promise in advancing energy storage system, enabling widespread adoption of renewable energy resources, as well as addressing intermittent issues. And in this realm of nanotechnologies is also nanoelectronics. As we saw in the beginning when Alexander was presenting his slides, you see that actually nanoelectronics and the social responsibility lies in promoting accessibility to affordability alongside innovation. So nanoelectronics can and have potential of revolutionizing the computing, communication, data storage, leading to more efficiency devices at lower energy consumption. However, it is crucial to ensure that the benefits of these advances are accessible to all segments of society, bridging the digital divide and preventing further marginalization of unprivileged communities. So we need to take into account this issue very well. One of the things which also stands out and will stand out is healthcare. So here nanotechnology poses a great and has great potential and has profound implication. Nanomedicine, for example, offers opportunities to more precise diagnostics. We have targeted drug delivery. We have personalized treatment strategies. We have very quick, actually, testing of different viruses, which can be much faster used to adopt ourselves for something like it was, a recent pandemic. So we can much quickly found the ways how we can actually detect the viruses, identify the viruses, and develop new drugs and strategies how to treat them. On the other hand, if you're looking at the Green Deal, environmental sustainability is a cornerstone of a social responsibility of science and nanotechnology. While nanomaterials hold all these great promises, pollution remediation, water purification, sustainable agriculture, and their environmental impacts must be thoroughly evaluated. Nanoparticles, namely, are released in the environment without adequate safeguards, can pose a risk to the ecosystem and human health. So although it's a promise, it's on the other side can have negative implications. And we need to take into account, and before this, the responsibility of research practices, we need to put into life cycle assessment and the risk mitigation strategies, as well as developing all this means. So furthermore, the social responsibility of science and nanotechnology extends ethical considerations surrounding labor practices, intellectual property rights, and geopolitical implication. It is imperative to foster something like inclusive and transparent research environment that promises collaboration, knowledge sharing, equitable distribution of benefits through all the world around. So we need to take into account this. Moreover, this international cooperation is essential to address those global challenges. So we need to work together, something what we saw in the first slides as well. And this is the only way how we can actually combat the climate change, public health issues, and resource scarcity. These are actually the most important things. So in a conclusion, I would say that Basically, the science social responsibility in terms of using nanotechnology encompasses multifaceted approach that prioritizes environmental sustainability, equitable access to benefits, ethical use of technology, and mitigation of potential risks, which need to be taken in account. By embracing all those principles, scientists and policymakers on the other side can harness the nanotechnology transformative potential and build more prosperous and equitable and sustainable future for all of us. And that would be my last statement. Thank you.
Many thanks, dear Uras, Professor Zwelber, for wonderful ideas for transformation that are really so much needed. May I take also this opportunity to welcome all the attendees. We have 20 participants in our panel at the moment, including our President Gary Jacobs and Board of Trustee members Marcel van der Voorde and Zbigniew Bochniarz, and also special greetings to our reporter Kani Moji from the Mothers Service Society. If anybody wonders what is this picture behind me, that's Josef Stefan, Slovenian physicist who discovered the black body radiation law in the 19th century. That was one of the two small challenges in physics that later led to the quantum physics. So that's how it happens, you know. So a small challenge that nobody knows how to answer, and then some big theory applies. And our next panelist is Fadwa El Guindi. I believe actually she doesn't need introduction, but still I will say a few words. She is an Egyptian-American anthropologist, a former professor of anthropology at Qatar University, author of several ethnographies. She's been the member, the fellow of WAAS for quite some time, and also the member of board of trustees. And she has held various positions in different, mainly American universities. And we look forward to your presentation, Fadwa, please.
Okay, I have my timer is not starting. Anyway, you know, as we look, we have two regions with very destructive wars in the Ukraine and in Palestine. And we look at the skies and we see drones and missiles going all over the place. And I really wonder whether the fiction of Star Wars has become reality, or was it already establishing what even the Academy cannot establish, which is an agenda for the future, and we are the future. It is important to recognize that the global landscape and the power structure has dramatically changed. And thought leaders, including many in the academy, really need to catch up a little bit with what's happening in the world today. I suggest we need a new UN Charter 2024, not a revised charter, but a new charter, because the charter was based on a very different situation after the Second World War. The charter should reflect the change in the balance of power in the world today, and inclusion of East and West in the world, North and South. All these countries and member states should be strongly represented, and perhaps a rethinking of the veto power, which has been it's really irrelevant today in today's world. I also want to point out that our views of whether science is good or bad, or should be applicable or not applicable, should have responsibility or not, are really obsolete. We are often blurring science with the scientists, and we separate science from indigenous knowledge, which is often indigenous knowledge is often applied science. Many scientists, as we know, choose to collaborate with destruction, and this should be monitored. Drones, from my first-hand experience in Qatar, archaeologists were trying to use drones for archaeological research. Of course, the state didn't approve it easily, or approve it at all, I don't remember, because of worry for spying, which is not an issue anymore because the whole world is being spied on from a distance. So we know that drones can be used for beneficial knowledge, but we are using it for destruction that is unheard of. But of course, we don't necessarily need drones and missiles because we can achieve pacification or forced dislocation of people by simply weaponizing starvation. People talk about, in many sessions, we have sessions on food security. What if we use food against the people? The food was secure, it was available, but it's used against them. Why? Because we want them to move, and if they move, then we can have their piece of land. As I said, intelligence and spying, which used to be you need someone there to, go in and move and get the interview and spy on administrators and politicians and military people. You don't need to be there anymore. The drones are doing a very good job of spying and sending the messages back. So that's how technology is being used. Regular armies are now not replaced by, along with regular armies, we have employing mercenaries who kill and die for causes they do not understand. So I would like to say science should not be blamed for all that. I am a believer that science must go on exploration, discovery, systematic data, imagination, inspiration. It should go on. Scientists who violate the codes of morality and ethical standards of their own fields must be monitored and must be remembered and must be publicized, even though that's an invasion of privacy. But we have to separate the two because we have a problem with scientists who are lured by money. I know many cases in anthropology in which their knowledge, which is very valuable about the culture of a people, is being exploited by intelligence services and by military services to control, to torture, and stuff like that. So, also when we talk about aligning application of science and technology, I would say you have to align it with people's needs, which requires a recognition of different cultural traditions, levels of development of different countries, demographics of a country with 100 million, 200 million is different from a country with about 200,000, 300,000. They always talk about the educational system in Finland, which is not really applicable to India. It's not applicable to Egypt or anywhere else. We have to really be critical of them. So we have to take cultural traditions, levels of development, demographics of a country, level of education, all in consideration. I would like to conclude with the scientist in the crib. The Scientist in the Crib is actually the name of a book that was very popular decades ago. And I keep thinking of that toddler in the shower where his parent is, he or she is bathing him. And the toddler sees water coming down the tap and tries to hold it. What we do with that makes a big difference. Do we cultivate this curiosity and make a scientist be interested in matter and the nature of matter and how to use matter? Or we stop him and crush him or her and therefore stop the science. Science is neither good or bad. One should have no responsibility. It's amoral. It is about research, And it is those who apply it, the military, the politicians, even the capitalists, let's say, all those who have interest in abusing science and misapplying science. But we do not want to blame science for all the evils in the world. Thank you.
Many thanks, dear Fadwa, for this deep insight, which will make, I think, our reporter's life quite difficult to capture everything. And still, there are really a lot of deep truths that we need to abide by. And hopefully this will help everybody to live better science in the future. And now we can move on to our next panelist. Our next panelist is Professor Jalal Azin from the University of Tunis. He's professor of system theory and control, and he has a really good history of working in international organizations as civil servant. He's been chairholder of the UNESCO Chair on Science, Technology, Innovation Policy, advisory board member of the UNESCO Science Report 2020, and founding and current president of Tunisian Association of Advancement of Science, Technology, and Innovation think tank, and of many other important international bodies. Also senior associated ICTP member, senior member of IEEE, and a lot of other important functions. So that's why we are really very happy to have you with us. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alexander. I'm very honored to be with my colleagues, fellows here in this conference, and would like, of course, to congratulate WAAS for its 64th conference. And as most of you probably know, this is my first year as a fellow and my first participation in WAAS conference. I was following of course, most of the session that took place yesterday and today, and I can tell that I was listening to all of these great people was highly uplifting, and I can tell there is a lot of really synchronization as far as ideas and visions among all of these panelists. So that was really rewarding, and I'm sure whatever is coming will be also as much, if not more. So for my intervention, I wanted, of course, to insist on something very, very important, which is how trustworthy science. We grew up to really trust science. And that's a very, very important issue when we talk about science and how society looks up to science and how it trusts science and scientists. That's the general, actually, situation. When we hear about science, we also think of certainty, even though scientists, grow up being more and more uncertain the more they know. Also, we think of modernity, because when we think of modernity, we think of science as being a major pillar of that modernity. And of course, science, technology, and innovation as being the engine of development. So all of these, positively loaded characteristics of science give science its place, as well as its tremendous role in somehow fashioning and tailoring the human culture and the human behavior. And I believe us being here today is, a testimony to that role and place science has in our civilization. We all know that the founding father of WAAS also launched this wonderful project because humanity was undergoing a very, very challenging crisis, be it the Manhattan Project and the nuclear holocaust, or the missile crisis. But today, we are facing these problems and much, much more, okay? And we are even facing, some anthropogenic existential threats that humanity somehow, through its wisdom or the lack of it, has generated, okay? And of course, going back to the trustworthiness of science, the list of the scientific achievements is a long one and keeps growing day by day. And every one of us has probably his own, preferred event or result or achievement of science. Also, when we talk about science, we all know that the scientific achievements and results find their application in technology. Okay, so technology usually is the expression of the findings and the results of science. So here I really, myself, and through my experience in STI policy, I prefer talking about technoscience, because really the demarcation line between science and technology is becoming so fuzzy, and somehow that science and technology feed to each other is becoming really the rule rather than exception today. Now, I wanted to talk about something very, very important about this technoscience things. The point that I wanted to really drive home today is that today we see a capture of science. We see a capture of technoscience by capital. So we as WAAS fellows, we as scientists, if we want to really leverage, science to tackle, to apprehend, our global challenges, we have to understand, who is somehow influencing the sciences through the policies, through the funding, and through also the training and teaching. And this point to me is fundamental, because we talk about science, we trust science as if that science is really ready to answer whatever needs and requests that we make of it, as much as we can, But if we understand how science and technoscience has been captured by capital, maybe roughly speaking, since the 70s, we understand that that capture has molded the science and technology to the advantage of the capital. It has been, captured to further the power and the wealth of these wealthy and powerful. And I would even say that today's problems, today's existential threats that humanity is facing is due in a large extent to this capture. Because the wealthy and powerful, when they captured science and technology to their own benefits, they really overlooked or even put aside all the challenges and the true challenges that humanity is facing. And they really invested their power, their money to modify regulation, to steer funding, so that science works for their benefits and augments and further their power and their wealth. Today, we all know, for those who are familiar with science, technology, and innovation policy, that these policies are more driven by what we call technology push policy, rather than society needs policy. And that already, gives us a clear idea of how science and technology, or better, technoscience, is being leveraged for the benefit of the 1% and not for the benefit of humanity as a whole. So what I'm trying to say here, if we really would like to have science and technology tackle our existential threats, we need somehow to save science and technology from this capture. How to liberate science and technology from this capture, and I believe this is one of the greatest challenges institutions like WAAS faces in order to leverage science and technology for the security of all. And I will stop here.
Many thanks, dear Jalal, for such profound words of wisdom. That's why we allowed a few minutes more. So now we are going to have to ask Ranjani to make really of Carmus, also associate fellow and associate senior research associate at Mother Society. Please.
Hello all. I'm going to keep this really short. During the plenary session yesterday, Ketan Patel mentioned how we have all the resources we need, the money, the people, the knowledge, everything is at our will. But the only thing that is lacking, or what we need to do right now, is to leverage what we have in order to attain the SDGs. It's not that we don't have the solution. So I'm just going to, when I was thinking about the whole thing, we've already covered all the major points here. So I was just wondering, we already have all the knowledge that we could potentially have. There is still scope for progress, I agree, but how we leverage what we have at our disposal matters. And the only thing that we can do right now, as a network of networks, I'm referring to WAAS here, is to leverage the power of the networks that we already have, come together, join forces and engage people, engage citizens as to, educate them as to what the role of science is. And Professor Fadwa Gwindi often writes this, how culture is a primary force in education. Bring about this awareness that society is the main, it's the primary instrument that is needed to understand who we really are, what science is. It's not about some discovery. It's not about, academia alone. It's about how science is being used to make sure it addresses the well-being of all, which is, what Svelbar Uros, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, but he was referring to, or Jalal, I'm sorry, but the founding fathers of WAAS intended for WAAS to be this agency for human welfare. So how science should be used for the betterment of all humanity, and how education as an instrument, as a tool, can be used for consciously transmitting this to the younger generation. So I'm going to end this here. Thank you so much.
Many thanks, dear Ranjani, also to leave 2 minutes for the questions. And I see that we already had the first question from our Board of Trustee member, Jonathan Granoff. And he was asking, did wealth and poverty only begin dominating science in the 70s, or has it not always been the case? I think we can agree that this is very true, and this is actually our responsibility that we raise up to the challenge and we really make this future science and technology as well a better place in this world, so that it's not only that we look at the past, but that we look at the present and see what we can do in the future so that the situation improves. I mean, probably it won't improve like overnight or with some miraculous, I don't know, whatever, but if we all strive together to make this a better situation and to really apply science for the good of humanity and for good of all, then we can also contribute both to the real human security for all, so that people don't have to run away from the bombs or whatever, or from the fire, but they can really live peaceful and courageous and also creative lives which contribute to science. And then with this science together, we can make this world a better place. And I believe we still have half a minute if anybody would like to have the last intervention. In the meantime, I can mention that this Stop the Wars petition is going to be in the near future published on the change.org and also in the Cadmus, but Cadmus is now a little later. So anyway, it will first be on change.org so that people will be welcome. And we also need like better means to really stop this violence. You know, this will be like a small contribution, but we need some larger contribution, maybe also from the science. So the scientists invent the ways how to prevent the dictators from using their weapons. And hopefully something like that would also happen in the near future. You know, we have to be open to pleasant surprises so that science really does something good. We don't know what science will do. Nobody could have been able to predict what science will do, but sometimes science did really something great, and we are here to make it happen in the near future, to do something great and to make this world a better place. So I believe that our time has actually passed. It was really a very pleasant time together. Thank you to all panelists. Thank you to all participants. The number of participants has increased a lot. We have a lot of members from Board of Trustees, from World Academy, and it was really a pleasure to have such a great audience and such a great panel. So look forward to seeing you also live in the future. And all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Alexander.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Richard. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm fine. For some reason, my video, start my video. Now they now they let me in. Let's see if I'm going to come up here. Well, not yet. I guess we'll have to download the mind reading app instead.
We can see you.
You can? Well, I can't see myself. That's interesting. That's bizarre. What I see is a screen. Let's see. Now I'm able to see. You cannot start the screen share while other participant is sharing. Okay. Well, I will eventually have to be able to share my screen.
Yep. I think the moderator
Yeah, theoretically,
Oh.
that's what I am.
Okay. Well, not the moderator. I meant guess the
Oh,
host.
there we go. All right.
There you go.
So that's good. Andrea, how are you? Good to see you.
Hello, I'm very well. How are you?
Excellent and reasonable sometimes.
Can you hear me well?
Yes, I hear you just fine.
That's great. Perfect.
Let's see, Mariana and Christoph. I don't know. I see let's see everybody here. Let's see. Aha. Let's see. No, we still got a few more minutes. Hopefully they'll be coming on. If not, more time for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you saw the email, hopefully a few weeks ago. What I was thinking is, since we've got so much to talk about, I thought rather than give each of you an introduction, which would chew up 5 or more minutes, let you do whatever you want to do. You give your introduction, you go for 10 minutes, whatever you want, whatever you say, and then we just go on to the next person. And then hopefully we got a few minutes toward the end there to discuss among ourselves, or if anybody's got questions. Sound reasonable?
It's fine.
does.
I can do slides or not slides. I can speak to it either way.
Well, I think you can do slides because I hope I'm going to be able to do that.
Okay.
Yes, you will be able to share your slides. Yes.
Okay, so if I click on now, let's see if I click up here. Ta-dum, ta-dum. Let's see, share, where did it go? Where did it go? Let's see. Oh, that's interesting. Let's see. Aha. Okay, so you see a slide?
Yep.
Global governance, artificial intelligence?
Yep.
Yeah. Somebody once said, we really need governance of artificial stupidity or human stupidity. Yes, that stupidity is going to do us in.
It was interesting. I had a conversation with Curtis Preem about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and one of the co-founders of NVIDIA, of course, and who's behind a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
And he is really optimistic about the future in a sense because of all of the bad data that's really being used, such that it has less credibility than obviously people are worried about, which is an interesting perspective.
Yeah. Well, as you know, there's a big push now to have a whole lot of specialty models. So you have, let's say, one of just all the medical journals of the world. Boom.
Yep.
So you don't have any nonsense, non-journal stuff. Hello, Christoph. How are you? You want to unmute yourself? Christoph, can you hear us okay? Going once, going twice. Ah, there you are. Christoph, you
Yes.
okay? Good. All right. We got a few more minutes. Whoops, you just disappeared. Let's see, now what's going on here? Click on here. Okay. Ah, there you are. Richard, I take it you got yourself on mute on purpose.
I do. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I guess we're just waiting for Mariana. Christoph, what I just mentioned to the others is I thought, as I mentioned in the email before, is I think rather than spend time introducing everybody, which would chew up some 5 or 10 minutes, is let each person introduce themselves the way they want to.
Yeah.
And do the 8 or 10 minutes about whatever they want to say. And we just sort of like go right on down the line. And if we got some time, then we discuss among ourselves.
Yes, I think that's fine. I suggest and then I can moderate maybe at the end, but you do the moderation now. And also I suggest you do I speak not as the second, I speak to after the others. I prefer, if that is okay for you.
Oh, you don't want to speak second? You want to speak at the end?
I would suggest yes.
Yeah, okay. So you can take 8 or 10 minutes or so at the end, yeah?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So then well, if I don't see Mariana
I mean,
yet.
after I would speak after the other speakers, panelists.
But so you wouldn't speak after I talk then?
Not at the very beginning, as you would
Right, okay.
speak
All right.
first, and
That's
then
fine.
the other panelists, and then me.
Okay. Okay, gotcha. All right.
Okay.
All right. And let's see, is Mariana around? Mariana, where are you? Well, if she's not here in 1 minute, we go off. Says, I am here. Yeah, I don't see you connected. Can you unmute yourself?
Yes.
You're at the iPhone. There you are.
They just
Okay.
gave me the access as a panelist. I was there all the time, but now I received the access.
Right. Okay. So what we're going to do is each of us take about 8 or 10 minutes. I'll go first. You'll go next. Richard would go, and then Andrea, and then Christoph would finish up pulling it all together at the end.
Okay.
All right. Let's see. I guess we're all set to go. Yes. Going once, going twice. So let's see if I can share. Am I sharing? Let's see. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All
Yes.
right. Do this. Hello, everybody. We're going to talk about what may be the most difficult management problem humanity has ever faced, and that is managing the transition from narrow intelligence to general intelligence. We started off last July with Security Council taking a look at these questions. It mostly focused on narrow intelligence. China did talk about super intelligence. Nobody else did. And Russia said they don't want to have any transnational or supranational organization because the United States or the West would dominate it. So therefore, the question of governance of this topic really would have to move this to the General Assembly rather than Security Council. And the president of the General Assembly, the Secretary General of the UN did say he was going to put together a task force to come up with some ideas on this. And they did their initial report in December, and it was pretty bland. It said, well, we didn't come up with a model. We'll talk about that later on, and said some very nice things that were less detailed than had already been written by others, unfortunately. So it was a bit disappointing. Hopefully that'll do a little better on the next final report. Then the next move was with parliaments. 70 parliamentary governments were represented in Montevideo, Uruguay, to a meeting that took a look at to take parliaments to have a committee for the future to take a look at the whole game and what should that, if they do that, then what should be at the top of their agenda. And the agreement was it should be artificial general intelligence. They're supposed to, I don't know if they have, that they're supposed to have created some drafts and share them with each other. So because this is going to be a whole of humanity effort here. But the trouble is I fear that they're so nervous about saying something stupid that they won't do that first draft. I think they got to do those first drafts. They got to share them. They can be classified, they can be secret. But we as a people and the parliamentary systems have to get this together because it's where the rubber hits the road to a large degree is parliamentary rules on this stuff. That's what gives the authority for standards and enforcement and all the rest of it. Then the next move was over to UK with the Blatchford meeting on AI safety. A very nice agreement. 28 countries signed it, say let's all collaborate. But they were talking again about narrow intelligence and generative intelligence. They did use the word frontier, but as you listen to people when they are talking, what they were really talking about is narrow intelligence, not the future general intelligence so much. Then there is a meeting between the United States and China in San Francisco that says, all right, we're going to collaborate. We're going to figure out how to get this done as the two sort of main leaders. that was nice. And then it turned out that there was a Financial Times did an article, to my knowledge, they're the only source of this information, that there was a secret meeting between China and the United States held in Geneva before the UN Security Council meeting and before the Blatchford meeting in UK. So apparently there's some nice stuff maybe going on that I am not privy to. Then the UN had a resolution initiated by the United States, and another 122 countries signed on and approved by consensus by everybody. And it's a very nice document. It's a lot of good words, a lot of good ideas. I applaud it. But again, it's for narrow intelligence. It's not really addressing the advanced future general intelligence stuff. Anyway, but then in April, Biden and the president still continued to talk. So at least there seems to be some quiet negotiations going on there. Maybe some of you may know what the content is. Now, I grant you that the distinctions between narrow, general, and super are not as clear and crisp as this graph would give you, but they are. So it may be a gradation going between each of these. However, to me, the only place that humanity's got a chance in this game is that transition between narrow and general, however gradations you talk about. And I think we need a convention that then authorizes eventually an agency that implements this stuff. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But to me, that's the bullet point. Because once we get to general, general learns and moves faster than we're going to be able to manage too easily. And I think that's where we lose control going into super. And so to me, the only place we can really do is right now, for the next few years, get these agreements together. We've got a study going on right now, 3 phases. We put together a list of 22 questions, which just by themselves, the 22 questions are worth your time to think through yourself. Then this was given out to 55 AGI leaders to address whichever one they wanted to, and we got a 60-page report, which is available online. Then the next step, we said, okay, what are some of the regulations and what are the governance models? So then that report is 99% done. And then hopefully we'll start soon to write some scenarios on how it works and how it doesn't work. Of the 5 models that we threw out there in the questionnaire, the one that got the highest number, 51% of people said either it's very highly important or high. I mean, it was a multi-stakeholder trans institute in partnership with a system of AGI narrow intelligences. So it's human and AI. It's a hybrid, a hybrid management system, so to speak, but also multi-stakeholders, not just nation states. So it's not the International Atomic Energy Agency model. It's a unique sort of a model where we have the key players in the game interacting and also augmented by artificial intelligence. The next model that was discussed and rated second highest was a multi-agency model with a UN AGI agency as the main organization, but with some governance functions managed by different parts of the UN. So it's still to a large degree a UN system, not necessarily as multifaceted and a hybrid model as the first one. The third one was a decentralized governance of AGI that no one quite owns, in the same way that the internet is not quite owned. There's several groups, but one prominent one is a Singularity Net, where people interact, sharing codes in a platform. And then the idea is that all of these narrow interactions, maybe AGI emerges from that nobody quite owns. An interesting approach. There's worried that if you have centralized intelligence on this, there's too much power, and it's a way to get around that. A third one, or a fourth one, is put out by Eliezer Podolsky. Said, let's have several centers around the world, put all this stuff and supervise the chips and so forth, and the electricity system, the water cooling, put it several locations, and then have treaties, which countries can use it based upon how their input. And then the last one was create 2 divisions within a UN system, one for narrow AI and one for general. The reason for that is because every time we start to move forward on these things, people fall back into narrow. and so distinguish that. Now, my time is just about up, so I'm going to race through these things. We have suggestions for the developers. We thought that there ought to be rules for developers. There got to be rules for governments themselves, how they give the licenses out, and how those licenses are certified by UN systems. And I'll make this PowerPoint available to everybody later on. So what are the things, some of the things the UN should do, and what are the things that the users themselves should do? And so what we need next is a UN convention. Any country can initiate a UN General Assembly resolution to say, resolve that a committee of the willing gets together and starts to write up a UN Convention on Artificial Intelligence with 2 sections, one for narrow, one for general. That's the end of my time, I think. So let me stop sharing here. Let's see, how do I do this? Click here. Stop sharing, stop. There we go. Stop share. Yes. Am I stop sharing? Yes. Good. Okay. Mariana, are you all set to go next? Going once?
Yes.
Oh, there we go. Good. All right. There you are.
Yeah, I dare to say that our project is one of the most complex and really good approach of a framework how to deal with AGI. And my contribution today would be in this perspective. But before moving on the reasoning about AGI, I would like to talk briefly about AI. This is not because I neglect the importance of AGI, but this is because at some point we may encounter overlapping of unresolved or unresolvable problems related both to AI and AGI. And this is not that much discussed. We know that this phenomenon is unprecedented, and never before in human history has there been such an accelerator of time and a multiplier both of risks and opportunities. And I recently spoke at a conference where my presentation was on how AI is transforming the lawsuits, and the judiciary system. And people there, this was a European network of prosecutors and judges, were not prepared at all. And I can prove that we already started on a wrong approach. If we make a comparative analysis between European Union AI Act and Biden Act and Bletchley Declaration, and also the declaration you already mentioned, we'll see some differences, especially, for example, in United States, face recognition is not forbidden, it's permitted, and here in European Union, with some exclusion, it's already forbidden. So we already started to create different jurisdictions. And this is one significant risk that we should consider, not only for AI, but for AGI. And even if we do that on the basic level, starting from AI, we'll multiply these effects with AGI. So, and when we don't have time to build a valuable reflection of the events that are surrounding AI, because they are so new and unprecedented and superimposed every day, we could not create values, and then we could not transform these values into norms. And when AGI evolve or self-evolve, the value alignment would be really challenging. So I suggested to this European network of judges and prosecutors to start to think about a legal system that is fluid and reactive. And I call that fluid law, because the law is already transformed, and in lawsuit, in litigation, especially in China and in Estonia, judges feel them challenged to oppose decisions that are proposed and made by AI, because there is misunderstanding between the concepts. And this is a very good example of lack of value alignment and the lack of understanding of the reasoning, of the super rational reasoning of AI and our reasoning as human beings and professionals. So this is this is more content analysis, not like proposing a way how to organize the process and to govern and control AGI. But if we start to do that with AI, we can continue with AGI. So my proposal was to create a fluid flow system that is characterized by agility, adaptability, and responsiveness. And the system of judges is very conservative, so they were very opposing that. But this is the only way to be super reactive to these new phenomena that are coming every day. And when we are talking now about AGI, of course, we should consider all the scenarios of its origin. It is described in our first part of the project in our report. So we should develop and conduct any kind of scenarios describing what might be its origin, whether it will be like an upgrade of this large language or generative models, whether this will be a new hardware architecture or another development of the so-called evolutionary algorithms, or it will be a result of the emerging property. We need to develop that kind of scenarios. And of course, the second very significant and important topic is, as I mentioned already, is the value alignment. We should start to try to codify minimal value base in AI, so eventually it can reproduce that in the AGI, but it's not sure, but at least we could try. And for governance, I assume that what you suggest is the best approach until now, but we need global governance. Otherwise, if we create different approaches and different jurisdictions, we will face only chaos and not possibility to control it at all. And regarding one of the proposals that is described in our document to control the chips, I just found that there are a lot of people, a lot of software developers who are trying to train AI models without access to GPUs and CPUs. And they found several ways to do that, like decentralizing computing network, peer-to-peer data sharing, parallel processing, distributed training algorithms. So my point is that there's always been open sources, and I assume that there will be open sources approaches to AGI too, and maybe to a certain point the control would be impossible or very limited. So this is just some examples, like food of thoughts to take into consideration, and I assume my time just finished.
And Mariana forgot to mention that she was it was Bulgarian Academy of Science, also the chair of the Millennium Project in Bulgaria. And she is also, I think, the UNESCO. You were the representative of Bulgaria to UNESCO
Yes.
on the AI work. And I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Robin Hood. I steal from the knowledgeable and I give to the ignorant. And so my cover is Jerry Glenn, the CEO of the Millennium Project. So now, Richard, introduce yourself too. We forgot to do that.
Hello. I've got a quick deck that I'll share. And let's see if I can get that going. So just real quickly, I'm Richard Plotka. I'm a professor of practice at RPI, director, and also the director of information technology and web science. We are a multidisciplinary program and in applied computing. We started 25 years ago. I come from initially industry, primarily consulting, CIO, CTO, C-suite things. I started a couple of companies and sold them. And so serial entrepreneur, failed retiree, and started teaching about 14 years ago and just fell in love with it. And working with the students has been an amazing thing, and the new technologies. And so our IT program is an applied computing, as I say. It's designed to take students from other engineering, scientific, and arts, humanities, business disciplines and apply them to the common purposes of life. So we teach them skills to how can they make a difference quickly, and at the same time do it in an ethical and responsible way. We're breeding the future leaders of the world. How do we make sure they're doing it in a good way? And that is one of our pillars, and that's one of the things that we've stood on for these 25 years and continue to do so. And our students go on into data science and analytics, product management, security, machine learning, AI, other disciplines at all of the top tier companies. So they are at all of these companies making a difference now. They're at Microsoft, they're at Google, they're at OpenAI, they're at all these different places. And so how do we go about dealing with ML and AI or AI? And I agree with Mariana a little bit that it's more of an evolutionary thing than something we can separate, right? Because we have to prepare. Now, I'm also coming at it from an educational perspective, right? In this case. So we teach information technology, web science, the computer science disciplines, the business, the electrical systems, every school does that. We teach the AI fundamentals, and we're making students prepared to work with, develop, enhance, and work with AI and machine learning models throughout all types of different disciplines. But now, how do we differentiate, and how do we differentiate the leaders? And I think this fits into some of the strategy for governance, is we expose them to a strong core of ethics, heavy group work starting in their freshman year all the way through, socially focused projects, and real-world research and scenarios. So we have them apply their disciplines to real-world scenarios now in somewhat controversial areas, perhaps. And so how do we do this to ensure that ultimately AGI will aid society and be a tool for society rather than take over, right? And so ethics alone are not good enough. Regulation alone is not dynamic enough. Corporate governance is too biased, right? We can't depend on any one company to do it. By definition, they're designed for their own objectives, despite how they may want to work with everyone. It's naive to think that that would be practical to centralize it with the companies that create it. So it requires everyone in the machine learning value chain to participate: the information architects, the data people, the developers, the consumers, everyone, right? And so how do we do that? We educate the future workforce to develop and use AI and AGI responsibly, protect the human element, keep them aware, and then to prepare the Gen Z and A to lead these initiatives, because they're the future. They're the ones that are inheriting all of this, and they're the ones that are going to live with all of it. Quite frankly, it's already past what we can effectively do long-term with it. It's the younger folks that have to do it. Some of the projects that we've worked on in the last couple of years, and this is just an example, ethical use of AI in data use at Reddit as compared with their privacy policy. So comparing Reddit's privacy policy with how the actual data that is available through the APIs can be used, and then applying AI to that to see what inferences can be made. COVID spread based on weather data, flu propagation in areas based on income and demographic data to take a look at how flu and how other illnesses are propagated in different areas based on different demographics. Another one is how a company you've never heard of sends you letters about your medical condition. You know, there's the famous story of a family learning that their 14-year-old daughter was pregnant because they started getting advertisements for pregnancy tests, right? And then more recently, because we've just installed the first quantum computer on a university campus, application of AI and quantum computing and large language models. So now because when we start talking about AGI, quantum very easily could be a big part of that. Certainly if quantum becomes something more prevalent and becomes more practical, which all indications are that it is, we're in for a much faster growth of AGI than even we think at this point in all likelihood. So we've started to look at that as well. And here's an example poster, which I won't bore everybody with, but I'll make it available in the slides. And this was basically the tool where they took a look at how can we identify bias in the large language models, and can we use quantum computing to kind of help assess that. And so they've started doing that, and they're actually running on the quantum computer, and that's an active project right now. So in summary, our strategy is to prepare. Sorry?
Richard, quick question. Whose quantum computer are you using?
It's IBM System 1.
IBM, okay.
Yep. And so we're preparing future leaders by giving students the tools to excel. Start by creating the best of breed machine learning experts. Prepare them to be leaders in the space, not just mechanics. Instill in them a strong ethical awareness, nurture their social consciousness. Most of those projects I just mentioned were suggested by the students. So we take that social awareness or social consciousness and we allow them to expand upon it and explore it. Exposes them to real world applications where AGI may be used to help as well, or it may or could be detrimental. And supporting their natural inclination to make things better using the tools they've developed. RPI's, one of RPI's mission statements, or I guess taglines, is why not change the world? And we take it seriously, and that's something that we kind of do. And so we're looking at the future generations or the current generations, I should say, that are going through school and what have you, to be prepared to lead this. And I think that the hybrid approach that Jerry was talking about, as well as the committee approach of oversight that Mariana was talking about, I think those are both very important things. And I think that developing through education the awareness of what this means is extremely important, because one of the problems we have is that no matter what we introduce as an idea of governance, the lay folks that use this stuff on a day-to-day basis just don't care, because they want their clicks to be finished. They don't really care how they got it initially, unless they're made aware. And I think, and obviously from my perspective, I'm biased, I think education is the way to do that. And so I don't know if my time is up, but I will stop there and let.
Excellent. Richard, as the astronaut has said at the factory that was making the rocket ship, do good work. So with your students, do good work.
We are trying. We're
Okay.
trying. Thank you.
Andrea, you're next.
Thank you, Jerome. Good morning, good afternoon, and evening, everyone. I'm very, very happy, honored to speak about the governance of AGI. And I thank again the World Academy of Art and Science for the very, very kind invitation. I'm calling from Milan, Italy. Over the last 20 years-ish, I've been developing AI, narrow AI, and coaching data scientists, data leaders around the world on AI. And as an executive consultant, researcher, I spend my days envisioning and developing narrow AI, trying to bring economic value. So today, in my very, very brief contribution, I want to bring the voice of companies that are developing AI, the narrow one, and setting up governance frameworks. Now, I'm conscious I'm talking about narrow AI, not AGI, but I argue, I want to make the point that narrow AI offers already plenty of opportunity to learn and develop governance frameworks that will be then very much applicable to general intelligence and superhuman intelligences as well. So if we take all the successes and the failures, the many failures we are learning from today's companies on setting up sustainable AI governance, we have a good base, a good chance to design and propose AGI governance frameworks. I'd like to just a bit of myth busting about AGI as well, because AGI is not going to appear overnight. We already said that. It's a progressive evolution. There will not be one day when we can say AGI is here. Somebody would say that, but wouldn't trust. We might not actually even realize. So it's a gradual emergence. And this should reassure us, because it gives us the opportunity to learn from the current AI and prepare for the governance of AGI. The second part, AI is developing not in a unidirectional way, but in a very heterogeneous fashion across multiple dimensions all at once and at different speeds. And if you think about that, this is typical of intelligence in general. So intelligence, human, artificial intelligence, evolves irregularly across dimensions. There is not one intelligence, but many types of intelligence. You know, we can clearly see this in the development of narrow AI, which has demonstrated superhuman abilities in some areas, like image recognition, language translation, board games. But then the same AI is falling short in areas where toddlers might excel, which require common sense and emotional intelligence. And on this, I encourage everyone to read the Stanford AI Index Report 2024, which highlights these advancements and shows very clearly how AI can outperform humans in some tasks and fail miserably in others. So this progression underscores the importance of staying very flexible. We need to do something almost nearly impossible to get ready for something that we're not ready to understand and visualize well. But the good news is that businesses today are developing and accumulating experience in navigating this frontier of AI development. So we need to pay attention to what is already happening in companies as they might not succeed, but they try to govern AI, the narrow one. And in the companies I work with, I need to admit, we don't have AGI. However, these challenges we have with AI and the effective governance, since we don't have yet a recipe, they can be applied, similar to what also Mariana mentioned, to the AGI governance tomorrow. So we have many learnings from failures and successes. Let's see what we've learned. I would summarize them in 4 points so that they can give a hints for general AI. First, the importance of transparency. So transparency is crucial for AI governance, narrow and general, because clear communication about how AI systems work allows for human accountability, and we need to keep the human accountability. So transparent practices ensure that stakeholders understand AI capabilities and limitations. This is obvious, but it's worth saying. If we don't see how something is working, how can we govern it properly? We just can't, right? So companies are experimenting. We just mentioned explanatory and transparent AI. Governments are starting to regulate transparency. We're not getting to that. So AGI would be intrinsically less transparent than AI because more complex, less comprehensible, unless we fix the transparency in the current AI capabilities. That's why we should keep, working hard on, transparency and explanatory AI. The second thing is knowledge management. So companies are realizing now that effective knowledge management systems are essential for enabling AI capabilities and controlling their behavior properly, governing their behavior properly. So companies implementing AI are trying to make their knowledge assets codified, machine readable, organized. With AGI, this will be even more important because if the intelligence explodes, it amplifies the initial knowledge it has. So if this knowledge is sort of like blurred, not well governed, that would be an issue. So companies are realizing that today they don't need only IT, information technology, IT. They are forced to enter a new era, KT, knowledge technologies. And this is a good thing because if we have better codified knowledge, humanity can develop more even, and we can control AI even better. Somebody said that the best thing of big data was to make small data relevant again. And I would argue that one of the best things of AI is to make human knowledge more relevant than ever, because accessible human knowledge is a key ingredient, unmissable ingredient for AI to create value. And AI opened the eyes of men, women to the importance of codifying human knowledge. So let's make the best out of this learning and find sustainable practices for human knowledge management. Third, second last bit, managing bias. Ethical utilization of AI involves addressing and mitigating biases which are embedded really in the technology. And it's important to be very clear on the fact that every piece of bias in AI comes from humans. We should be super aware of that. It's important to highlight. And I would quote the French philosopher of technology, Gilbert Simondon, who said, "What resides in the machines is human reality, human gesture fixed and crystallized into working structure." And this was true for the technology Simondon saw in the 50s. It's very true today with AI. In AI, we see the crystallized version of human knowledge. So as a consequence, AI reflects the good and the bad traits of humanity, and it's essential to govern AI systems so they can promote fairness and equity. Now, with AGI, the risk of not managing bias will go to the next level, because how can we control biases in outputs that are results of maybe superhuman reasoning procedures? So humans already naturally tend to disguise and try to hide biases. So how powerful could a superhuman AI be at disguising biases and inequality? And the point I want to make here, it's a motive, is that we need to fix biases in AI now, in narrow AI now, to have the chance to govern AGI properly tomorrow. The fourth bit, and the last, and I come back to this important point that Richard introduced, is education. We are learning in companies as we develop AI that we cannot govern something people don't understand, or even worse, the people are scared of. So equipping the workforce with the skills to work with AI is just vital. Education and upskilling programs are essential to prepare employees. Now, these programs ensure that the workforce can effectively develop, implement, and govern AI systems. Now, we know education takes time. We need to accelerate now and go beyond university courses. Of course, we need university courses like the ones that Richard was telling us about, but we need to go beyond that, because the potential and risk of AI should be taught in schools, starting early on. We should avoid classifying AI as a technical notion and rethink education, go beyond what Piero Dominici, a fellow of the Academy, called the false dichotomies, like scientific field versus the humanities, knowledge versus competencies, hard skills versus soft skills. We need to go beyond that. Education AI will prepare the society to govern AGI. So education needs to start early on. It should be interdisciplinary. AI is not a technicality, it's not for technical people. We need leaders, like I'm quoting Richard, not mechanics when it comes to AI. Leaders, not mechanics. Now, let me conclude. I would emphasize again the importance of preparing AGI governance, considering what we have already learned in the current governance setup, especially from failures that we are not able to tackle yet. AI, narrow AI, already showing glimpses of what it's ahead of us with AGI. Let's exploit them. Our companies are the perfect test beds to experiment these new ways of governing technology. So let's leverage them. Let's experiment codifying governance models that enable the fourth thing: transparency, accessible knowledge management, absence of biases, and broad universal education of AI. If we find a recipe that works for narrow AI today, we have our chance to prepare at best for AGI governance. They can be applied more broadly in a broader context. So let's think about that.
Thank you,
very
Andrea.
much.
Thank you. That triggered in my mind. I should have mentioned something in the beginning. I'm on the working group of IEEE putting together the governance for organizations, which includes businesses. And the work is, almost all of the work is nitpicking definitions. If you say you're aligning with well-being, what do you mean by well-being? Because the people will use our standards there for auditing. Like, so if an auditor has to say you're okay, what are the rules? Well, that's actually, we're way behind schedule. We're supposed to have been done last year. Hopefully it comes out in a couple of months, maybe like 3 or 4 months, hopefully. And your businesses will be happy to look at them, and hopefully it'll help out the auditing process. Okay,
Thank you.
Chris, yeah. we can keep touch afterward.
Yeah.
They've got any interest in that. I don't know. They sell these standards. I don't know how much I'm allowed to share with colleagues. We'll see. Anyway, Christoph, tie it all together. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, thank you so much, Terry. Thank you for the other speakers. I'm happy to have a short contribution. Coming from the ethics side, and as a professional ethicist, of course, I listen carefully. And I must confess, even though I'm publishing on AI and I'm just working now on a book on AI governance ethics. We published data ethics last year with 45 articles, but still I feel like a student discovering the field. Why say that? Because it means I can only underline what all of you said. We need education, we need education, we need education. That means you are the specialist, so to say, deeply involved in the technology, but the majority do not follow. But let me start with another point. You see in my background screen the lake of not of Geneva, but of Neuchâtel, another beautiful lake in Switzerland. And I'm in fact sitting there, but it's raining now. But I mention it because we are human beings. And while listening to you, there was a moment when I said, oh, it would be nice now to go just to swim in the lake, to empty your brain. And maybe that's a human reaction also. There's so much complexity in this AI issue that we think, how can we not to forget to be humans with our human needs, to meet others, to meet nature, and so on. Now, coming back, just 6 short points. The first one, what was already mentioned by Jerry, speed is a big challenge. I think the speed of development is an ethical challenge because value changes, of course. Also, values change in a high speed, but there is a limit. Value systems are human systems which normally need generations to change, or at least years. And that is clashing with the speed of the technological development. I'm coming back to that in the last point. My second point is I'm more and more hesitant to agree with this view that we are now in a total disruption and it's totally new for humanity and the biggest threat we ever had as humanity. I think every generation has a challenge, and I would say look at it. We need some rationality in the debate. There's too much fear. Of course, I also fear. Of course, I also see a lot of problems. But I think every new technology, when we look at the history of technology, has provoked this fear because it's the unknown which makes the fear. So 100 years ago, when the cars started to run on the road, in Switzerland, in the Swiss Alps, one full canton said no cars in Swiss Alps ever, that's too dangerous and it's disturbing the nature. Canton Graubünden, Davos, everybody knows where Davos is. 100 years ago, the canton said no cars in Davos for never. Imagine, because it was a new technology and the people saw only the dead people and the dangers and all that. So I'm a bit more relaxed. Not relaxed is the right word, but not to be too alarmist, so to say, on that. My third point is the key. Of course, what are then the values? We all say we have to be value-driven in our technologies. And I fully agree with that. But I think we need not to reinvent the values. I just gave a lecture now on the ethics of the UN system and the values in our humanity. We still have to stick to peace, to freedom, to security, to participation, to fairness and justice, because these core values are not just fashion like clothes that we have or we can change. They are over centuries core human values to make us human. Then in that sense, I think it's worth to say we need to stick to these values with each new technology and challenge, and see how can we serve peace and not destruction, how can we serve fairness and not inequality, and so on. My fourth point is it's interesting what you said about open access. That technology will allow transparency. So transparency is certainly a very key element. The second is on the virtue side, the integrity of the researcher and the integrity of the user. And these again are core virtues over centuries, but we have to apply it also to that. That means not to reinvent the basic virtues, but to apply it to these new challenges and opportunities with the new technologies. My fifth point is about the governance. And I'm very happy, Jerome, and I hope you can share these slides, these very enlightening steps of what is going on concretely. But I came half an hour ago, I was lecturing 40 Polish entrepreneurs here in Neuchâtel about the ethics of the UN system. And if you look at that, between 30 and 50 years old in the midst of their professional life, the disillusion about UN was the major topic during the discussion. Oh, we don't believe anymore in the UN. UN cannot regulate. UN is weak. UN is slow. UN and so on. So we have to motivate people. I still believe the UN system is, or part of it, we have multilateral possibilities for regulations, but it's a hard work to do to show what is the benefit, what is the need, what is the comparative advantage of a multilateral instead of a superpower, one superpower or the other dictating the rest of the world what is right and wrong. So I still believe profoundly that we need, and this multilateral governance system in the technology, and I observe that I think technology is the best, maybe has the best chance for multilateral solutions because everybody is aware that we need. We cannot leave it alone to just everybody does what he or she wants, mainly he. I think it's a chance. We have an open door for regulating and governing AI as it's new, as it's not governing on peace and war. It's about governing technology. And that leads me to the last point, education, as everybody here on the panel describes. I can also make an offer. We in Global Ethics, we have these online modules, we have online courses, we cooperate with 200 universities. So I think we should take the chance. You have so much knowledge. Let us talk about the online education courses you offer, you develop, and we can help to spread it throughout the continents. But I would like to add one important part. I think many of you have in mind, if I listen carefully to you, that it's about education about technology, making aware what is AI, what are the risks and the chances. I would say every hour in school, which is about the technology, should be completed by a second hour on the values. I say that because in the Swiss in the Swiss educational system, for example, from primary school to university, what happens is the ethics courses are deleted and replaced by technology courses. That means, yeah, our kids 10 years old, 5 years old, they should know how to program, and yeah, maybe on ethics we can suspend it. It's not so important. You know, that's the reality in the ministries of education, and we and you and we all as tech guys and girls and specialists, we have to challenge this and say to the ministries of government, of course, we need programming skills of young people, but only under the condition that we reintroduce the value-based skills as well. Thank you.
Excellent. One of the things that I would ask our panel and the participants listening to this, as you speak with your parliament or your government or your UN mission representative, as much as possible, keep using the word how. We have a plethora of wonderful documents on AI. We've just mentioned a few of them here, but there's a wonder. And after every sentence that I read, I keep wanting to go, okay, how are you going to do that? How are you going to do that? And we talk about the time problem. You know, we don't know how fast and how time is not on our side, as Christopher was saying, right? So the faster we get to how, we got an awful lot of what. I mean, I'm actually quite happy with a lot of the what. Frankly, I'm pleased with that progress, but I am completely unhappy with the how progress. So maybe in the next round on this sort of stuff, we do this. We got to say, how are we doing on the how part? With that, let's open it up. Any thoughts, questions? We've got a little time left.
I would say something. AI is mirroring ourselves quite good. AI has biases and hallucinations, and we as a human species, we have biases and hallucinations, and we are cognizant for that. In the different, because AI is not cognizant. It doesn't know that it hallucinates and it has biases, but still we cannot remove that. And actually mirroring ourselves, technology could help us to take another pathway of evolution, because we can see that this is a distortion for our development. And when, for example, when some software engineers are trying to debias the data, we can see that the results are distorted. We can see that the reality is not the same. And also all the cognitive sciences are describing that we are hallucinating. So we could not try to remove something that is our own characteristic, but we could try to change ourselves in a better way. And when we are talking about new education, it should include new digital literacy, but also a kind of anthropological approach, how we should shift facing this mirroring effect. And these are more philosophical reflections, but I think they're important. And another very important thing is that people started to create and to be under the influence of social engineering. For example, a lot of my friends told me, or today AI was angry, ChatGPT was angry with me. And they're describing characteristics and features that don't exist. So we're trying to domesticate and to rationalize AI like we do with animals. But this is our approach. So we should consider also how we transform ourselves with the communication of AI. And this is another should be also should be a part of the new educational approach, because we are evolving or we are changing, but not that rationally also. So this is multifaceted approach. This is not just technology. This is also ourselves transforming our mindsets and our behavior.
Others?
If I may add just to what you, Mariana, said, that's a lovely approach. You know, I think if we can take AI as a mirror, or let's say something that leads us back to some fundamental questions. Who are we? What is a human being? What is our comparative advantage? Or what do we see in the mirror of a technology about ourselves? I think then we see that AI must not be a danger. It can be, of course, but it is helping, or we could reflect it, and in schools, in universities, in education, we can help to say, how does it help us to become more human? That's my main message and challenge when we look at AI. Not only how can it help us to be more efficient. Of course, I use ChatGPT because it gives me an answer that otherwise I would need 2 hours to read books and lexic and so on. So that's helpful. But we should not only use it as a tool, an instrument, but also raise these kind of philosophical questions that you ask. And I would even go deeper and say, even spiritual questions. You know, when I was in a conference on technology in India. Indians have the capacity to think of technology in a sharp, mathematical way, but at the same time reflect on it in a spiritual way, where I'm often surprised how they combine the two things. And then it becomes a real human effort and not just a technology.
Yeah. You know, one of the first thing that hit me when I was doing this IEEE meeting stuff is that here we are pulling together from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the UNESCO, et cetera, the best values that most people would nod their heads to, and saying that's going to be the decision criteria. Well, that's better than we as average people. You know, we're smart and dumb, and we're moral and we're immoral. We're a mix. So if we have increasing decision making made with this direction, civilization should become more ethical and moral. Now, yesterday or a couple days ago, there was a press conference that I missed. I was supposed to be in Australia of a new AI based upon all the spiritual teachings that they could get their hands on. So the model wasn't like all of internet. It's like pull the bog, you know, all this sort of stuff together, make a model. It's called Holly, Holli, Holly, and it's just debuted now, and I think it's going to be operational. I'm very operational now, but it's a speech where you talk to it, and this avatar tells you back, says you should do X or something. I don't know. Well, yeah, I haven't. But anyway, just to build on the moral stuff, I'm relatively pleased with the morality questions and the ethics. I think that the people are, because when we did the X.25s for internet back in the 1980s and so forth, we didn't discuss the morality of it at all. There was none of this stuff, none of it. And so humanity may have evolved a little bit, because now these conversations are all over the joint. And this Australian group with the morality AI thing. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we're almost done. We can chew up a couple more minutes here. I noticed that other panels ended a few minutes before the top of the hour, but then they didn't do anything during the top of the hour. So if you have something else to say, Richard, you've been a little quiet there.
No, I just want to thank you all for the opportunity to be able to present this. I love how each of our things all dovetailed so well together. I mean, it's clear that we have to celebrate and embrace what we as humans have evolved to be over time, and use and guide AI in that way, in such a way that I've had a friend that puts it in a very interesting way. And this is, we're birthing a new being in this AGI, and now we have to raise it. So it is almost, instead of governance, it's the nurturing and the raising of a new child. And I think looking at it in that way is helpful, in the sense that it gives us a perspective, because that's how we want to raise our children. So how do we raise our new child? And it's not a technology issue specifically, although technology is what's facilitating it, but it is more of an ethical and a humanitarian issue.
Now, I think the conference for today is over, correct?
Yes, we are concluding the session. We will meet again on June 26 and 27. Yes.
Okay. Is there anything that we should, is there any wrap-up session we should pay attention to, or is this the end?
Oh, this is the end of the session.
Okay.
We would love to hear a wrap-up from you if you'd like to.
Like to have what?
we would like to hear a wrap-up session from you.
Well, I
I'm
guess
saying is you can just wrap it up the session for us.
yeah. Well, Christopher did that. Christoph actually did that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think it
Yeah,
was
he did. Yes.
it was a lovely session, and some consistency in emphasizing the educational part, emphasizing the ethical part, but also emphasizing the need for governance and the search for what are the real the best ways to reach that, especially with this first presentation that we heard. So I think these are three dimensions. I hope that we in WAAS can continue to explore. And from my side, I would like to thank also everybody for the very insightful contributions, short, precise, challenging. Yeah, and it's not the last one. I think we have to discuss these things. It's a process, and it's a fast process, and I think we can be in touch to each other and also challenge each other where needed, or look for the support from each other. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I've got the email addresses of all the panels, so we can share the PowerPoints, Richards and so forth, myself. And if anybody else, or I guess make it available to Wes, to Gary, and then anybody can.
Please, yes, please share it, everybody of us. Yeah.
Absolutely, please.
Have a wonderful future.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you all.